Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you've been following the channel, you will know I've got this lovely U50 Hydro in for review, courtesy of First Class Watches. Now, I'll leave a link in the description to their website. If you're in the Kenilworth area, well, we're popping in. I'll also leave a link now on the page. All I ask, if you do contact them, please mention my name. Now, being that I've just reviewed this, I thought it'd be a lovely time to review all of the three watches together. Now, what I mean by that, this is the original, this came out later, and this is the latest. So basically, it's the complete collection of three. I don't think you'll find anywhere with all these three watches. Now, it all started off in the late 90s, and this, with this model here, this is an EZM2. It was basically Sinn in the late 90s came up with their first ever EZM range of watches. If you're into your Sinns, you'll know that means mission timer, and these are watches dedicated for certain purposes. It was either paramedics, military, fire brigade, whatever. Now, this was for the military, specifically the GSG-9. And they're sort of like, a little bit like SWAT, probably a little bit more hardcore than SWAT, but they are still a police unit. But there were other military units which did adopt it as well. I was lucky enough to see this very watch when I lived in Germany, and I always loved it. I thought it was such a cool looking watch. And then many years later, around about 2007, I think it was, somewhere around there, I actually brought this watch, and it is the very rare box set, aluminium box set model, which is I think there's only 120 in the world. So this watch I've had for a good few years. It is absolutely superb. I love the watch. Now, the big thing with all these watches they are oil filled. Now, what that means is basically these watches are, to all intents and purposes, waterproof. You're never going to be able to sort of like outdo one of these when it comes to water resistance, as all of these watches, are designated at 5 kilometers. And yep, I did just say kilometers, not meters. The cases can take over double that, so they are absolutely mad. Yes, I know there's nowhere you're ever going to use that, but does it matter? No, it is pub bragging rights. These definitely are the top of the tree. They are really, really good when it comes to that. Now, when they first started off with this one here, they used a silicone oil, but they soon found out that it actually turned all the lume yellow. It didn't really look that great, and it had negative effects, especially with the lume actually on there, so they weren't so good. Now, talking of lume, I've heard many people say that Sinns are terrible when it comes to lume, and I can't, sort of like, I'm completely can't understand that. My 103, 104 absolutely glow fantastically. Now, these ones don't glow quite as much because of the oil, but as you can see in the video, I recorded these for about 7 minutes or so, and the lume still looks good. I can read these all through the night, so I've got no problem with it myself. Now, the big thing is they're all quartz models, and people have been going on about the model used in this, but I think I've got an idea why they have gone the way they've gone. This one here, they use the ETA 955 312. Now, when it comes to accuracy, it's definitely not the best. Not the best at all. This probably does about 10 seconds a month or so, or somewhere around it. It isn't a great one, but the battery life is excellent. As with all these, expect to get a minimal of 5 years, but I normally get about 8 years or so with these actual batteries. And the only downside, they do have to go back to Germany to be refilled, because obviously as there's oil in here, you can't just put any oil in. It's their own oil, and there's a certain way and pressure they actually put it in. So it cost me in the UK to actually, when I contacted Sinn to get I contacted Sinn, they sent me a prepaid envelope. I think it was just over £200 to actually have it sent, come back. Remember, you get a 2-year warranty, a travel case with it as well. Now, when other brands can cost a lot more to have cost a little bit less to get a battery change, but you have to do it every 2 years. I don't want to talk about brands and all that, but yeah, there are other brands where in the time, in 8 years, you would have spent 3 times the amount on battery changes. So do be aware of that. I personally think it's a bit of a bargain. So anyway, in 2007, Sinn replaced this model with the updated UX. Now, big differences. Obviously, we are talking size. They went from a 41mm case to a 44mm case. This one is 13.3mm thick and 50mm lug to lug, and it went to a 22mm bracelet. Now, being that this was newer, they also added more tech. So we got AR coating on both sides of the glass. They went for the chunkier bracelet with the hex keys versus the standard screws on this model. And instead of having a bezel where you just prise it off with a case back tool, they went to what's called their captive bezel system with their screws. Now, I think this is an absolute cracking looking watch. It's just very clean and easy to read. In fact, the GSG9, when they released this new model, they actually sent Sinn their models back, which are all inscripted on the back with GSG9 and which squadron and so forth they went to. And they took these ones up. You could actually buy them. I think at the time they were €1,000 used, and they were just, I wish I could have got one. I've just missed out by a week. So this one here, I've had this watch for I think I might have brought it around about 2011-ish, somewhere around there. And it's just superb. Now, this also has the ETA movement, but this one has a slight variation. It's a 955.652 chronometer spec movement. So this actually carries a full chronometer specification. Now, one of the reasons why it does and how it can do that, it has what's called a thermocompensating movement. Basically, a piece of quartz, if you give it a certain amount of electricity, it will emit a pulse. Now, that pulse can change with temperature, and so this actually takes that into account. So that's what makes it special. One thing I should point out as well, you can see on this one more so, is what's called the UX bounce. Will it do it? If you look on the second hand, you see it go back. It goes forward, and then it goes back. Now, the reason for that is obviously that hand is being pushed through the oil, and as it goes to settle the oil, then the resistance is less and it goes back a fraction. So that's one thing it does. Another thing I do hear people talk about is the bubble you can get, and it is true. If I leave this watch in the cold, so if it's left in the cold, I don't know, somewhere in the cold for a day or two, you will get a bubble. As soon as it goes back on your wrist, it disappears. I haven't seen a bubble on this for well over a year, but it can happen, but it doesn't normally. Normally, the diaphragm on the back takes care of that, but it only has so much travel. So anyway, this again is a GSG9 variation. So it does have the what Sinn called tagmented bezel. Now that means it's incredibly scratch resistant. Not to say it can't be scratched, it is a lot more scratch resistant than most others. And I say captive bezel system, so you just unscrew the screws to pop it off. A far more elegant way of doing it. Now, obviously, they've just brought out the UX Hydro. Now, design cues, obviously, you can tell these two are pretty well the same. Only difference is crown placement. Now, I can only put that down to this. They haven't released the GSG9 variant of it. I don't know if they will, but if they do, they will replace it on this side, as the military always ask them if they could have the crown on this side, as it made there was no chance of putting any pressure on the back of their hand if they're wearing gloves, and if they have to put on boiler suits quick, they won't get snagged up as much as when they're on this side. I dare say they probably will at some point. So, only other difference other than that is the second hand. I love the stark white of this one. Now, this, obviously sizes wise, this is pretty well the same as this one. It's only a tiny bit thicker. I think that's, as I said, 11.3. This one is 11.7, but everything else is the same. So, the big qualm, obviously, is the movement. Those two over there both feature VTA 955, albeit in different variations, which is a 7 joule movement, rock solid. This one carries the Ronda 715 Ally. Now, this has an incredibly long battery life. It does state on Ronda's website 10 years, but obviously that's not when it's moving through oil. So, why have they gone Ronda and not ETA? Now, if you follow watches and their companies a little bit more in depth, you might know or not know that ETA is part of a Swatch group. Now, Swatch many years ago said they were not going to supply anyone outside the group with ETA movements anymore. And companies, have been fighting them over this, like Cousins UK. They've been trying to fight and try and get this overturned, but unfortunately, you're never going to beat the Swiss when it comes to their own. In the court of law in Switzerland, it's never going to happen. Bit of a shame. Now, the reason why I believe this still has the ETA movement could have been two things. Either they brought an incredibly large amount of them back in 2006 when the watch would have been being planned, but I can't see that personally. So I presume that they're under contract. I could be wrong, but I think that ETA is still under contract to supply watches which were already using their movements to carry on using them. Possibly like this. There might have been a bit of a difference being it was a quartz movement, not a mechanical, but I think this is why. I could be wrong. If anyone knows for definite, they can please tell me. But this one, there's no way they'd be allowed to get a new ETA movement in a new model. So this is why I believe they have gone with the Ronda movement. Now, if they were ever to overturn the ETA law, the sizes of the movements are very, very similar. So there's a chance you could actually fit the ETA movement in there, but they're not allowed to actually fit one. So this is why. Now, how does that affect the watch in its performance? If we look at this one here, this one I guarantee will be more accurate than this ETA we have in this one. But I'm going to try and take this into work next week and put it on a very expensive quartz tester and see if I can analyze the actual accuracy of it. But from people who've already got them have said they're incredibly accurate. They're like not losing any time at all in a month. So realistically, does it make a big difference that this has the actual paperwork with the chronometer spec movement and this one doesn't? Quite possibly not. Yes, I know that's a lot more expensive and this isn't, the movement in here definitely isn't an expensive movement. But does it do the job? Does it do it well? That's the main thing. And apparently it does. Now, other side notes. These watches obviously are all on the bracelets, but you do have the option of case hardening them. Now, obviously on the first one, that's been and gone. You can't get this. This is now an old discontinued model and was never available with what's called the Sinn tagmenting case hardening. But the UX is available, and so is this one. In fact, this one has been case hardened. Now, the way to tell that is on the bracelet, you can see there that this one features that symbol. That means it has been case hardened. And I presume on the back, does it actually say? Yeah, it doesn't say on this one. I am surprised. So, but it does have, this is a full tagmented. If you were to buy these in their basic form, so what I mean is on a leather strap, the actual price difference is less than €100. So it depends on which one you want to go for. I personally, at the moment, I do prefer this one. The UX. I love the GSG9 layout of it. I love the crown on that side, and I love the stark white hand there. I think it just looks absolutely superb. Let me put these on my wrist so you got an idea how they look. Let me just zoom out here. Now, quick wrist check. I'm wearing an EZM13. Bob has got the brand new Sinn 103 hand wind limited edition on there, which I have reviewed. Let's go to this one. So I say, I've had this one for well over 15 years. Love the watch. My wrist size is 7¼ inches or 18.5 centimeters. And there you go. It sits so snugly. Really is a nice watch to wear. I say it's, known that one for years. And then my UX. The UX I've also owned for, I don't know, around about 15 years plus. And there that is. Now, it just looks superb on the wrist. One thing I should say, these are also available with silicone bands, as you can see there. One thing I would say, on the larger watch, yes, the larger band is better. On the smaller watches, I just think the larger bands look ridiculous because they're the same length as the watch. I would go for the butterfly class, personally. So let's take this off. And now for the U50. Let me just put this on like that for now so you can see how it looks. And there you go. It just looks, it does look really nice. It does look a lot smaller than the UX. But I say, it's really up to you. Which one do you go for? I will be really interested in knowing which one you prefer out these two watches. And, you know, why. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that comparison. A little bit long, but as you know, when it comes to Sinns, I can waffle. So anyway, all the best. And most importantly, stay safe out there. Bye.